you find yourself at that point really starting to not really pay much attention?
It goes.
It's almost like that fried feeling. You just feel like, you're done, at that point. So for me, it was the 25 minutes or so. That worked great for me because I felt like I wasn't getting burned out. And that's really what you're trying to do. You're trying to, it's mainly all in the mind. You're trying to convince yourself not to get tired. So if you study 25, 30 minutes, whatever it may be, you get a break, then you come back, and you're constantly doing that. Because you're going to get your time in the end if you do that. I mean, you'll end up getting a good 3 or 4 hours, if you do it right. So, I mean, you will get the same amount of time. The only thing is you're not going to be nearly as burned out as a result. I would see some, people, they study 3 or 4 hours straight, and I just couldn't do that. That's just, I knew it didn't work for me. So any of the stuff that we're talking about, always keep in mind, you have to find what works for you. So if we say study an hour, maybe an hour is not suitable, well, that's okay. Just reduce that. But just make sure that you're getting some of those breaks in between as well. Because if you're not taking the breaks, you are going to get burned out, and you're going to be less productive in the end. So, also, visualize. So the visualize, it all, going to be right. So, you do want to have that, be positive. Believe that, if you do what you're supposed to, you study, all that stuff, that you are going to have good results. If you go in there with a negative attitude, chances are you're going to psych yourself out. And how many of you have done this? When you're taking a test, you're like, I got that wrong, I know I did, and then you start adding up. Okay, if I get this one wrong, I get this one wrong. The best I can do is maybe a 70 or 75. And so while you're thinking about all this, the test is actually going on, and so that could actually make it worse. And so, and I see that happen, quite a bit, where you just see people stressing out. You can see that stress as they're taking that test. Like, as an instructor, when I was teaching, you could really, you could see that from the student. You see them moving around a lot, just kind of, you can see them getting frustrated. And so, you do want to actually, have a good, positive, attitude going into it. Also, get your confidence up. For me, when I went and took a test, normally I felt pretty confident because I put in the time studying. If I studied, I did the flashcards. I created, I looked over my notes all the time. I typed my notes. I created, my own exams in some cases, depending on the class. By doing all that stuff, normally I felt pretty confident going in there because I knew at the end of the day I did everything I possibly could. There was nothing else I could have done, so I could live with whatever results there was. If I made a bad grade, I could say, you know what, I did everything. It's just, it just happens. But most of the time I felt pretty confident that I could go in there and do my job because I felt like I did my job, studying. And so most of the time you see the students who stress out really bad on the final is because they're missing something that they should have done but they didn't. So maybe they didn't study nearly as much time, or maybe they didn't do flashcards or any of this stuff. Maybe they only looked at their notes a day before the exam, and so they're freaking out. So if you want to have confidence, I would say use that time studying, creating those notes. That's what's going to do it. So my question is, do you feel like you are adequately doing what you need to right now? Do you feel like you're adequately prepared going in for your finals? Or is there anything that we covered that you thought, you know what, maybe I can do a little bit more of that? Questions?
All of it.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't really know how to study so much yet.
Okay. And I will say a lot of students, who are coming from high school, generally lack a lot of study skills because they didn't really have to study nearly as much in high school. And so, because, it is slightly different. So, for example, in high school, a lot of times, you kind of do little assignments each week. You don't have these huge, comprehensive, finals at times. I remember, when I was studying for a test, sometimes we'd have 40 to 50 pages of notes for one test. You don't see that in high school. So, you do have to try to prepare yourself, for those types of tests. And, for me, it's all about the time. How much time you put into it is probably going to determine how well you do. Now, I know plenty of students who, they study just before the test and they do fine. You never know. Some, just have that ability, they can do it. But I will say, eventually, it will catch up to them. It's just a matter of which class will it be, what subject, and that's what it all comes down to. And so most of the time, maybe they can get away with it. My question is, if you know that you can do better, why don't you just do better? You know, I mean, because, you know, the last thing you want is that once you leave that class, and let's say you make a C in there, for you to say, you know what, I should have made an A in that class. You know, that's the real regret, because, you know, in time, all those C's that you get for those classes that you could have done better in, they add up. You know, and maybe you miss out on a scholarship because, you know, your GPA dropped just slightly below what you wanted it to be because of that one class. And so it does add up over time. So you do want to be careful. So at the end of the day, this is what we covered. You know, general tips on, you know, studying for finals, specific ways to study, you know, for final exams, the 10 things to remember on the, you know, the day of your exam, and then for 6 tips to beat the final exam stress. Any questions? All right. I'm gonna
Get him talk.